Hello, everyone. Our names are
Sophie Balkin,
Ashley Danielson,
詹亨黄,
Cooper Millsark,
Ellie Rowland,
Carl Runcie,
Jack Tulloch,
Lian Xie.
and we are Preserving Perspectives.
We all know the phrase history repeats itself. This occurs because we often forget the details of the past. With modern technology, humanity can store more information and knowledge than our ancestors could have dreamed of. We can preserve experiences indefinitely in an easily accessible format that everyone who has internet access can view, all 4.57 billion of them. The world is currently in the midst of a pandemic, the extent of which has not been seen since the Spanish flu. If we can learn from this virus and remember the challenges it presented, we may be able to prevent or at least mitigate future such pandemics.
To learn from history, we must have good records and accounts of the past. We knew that not all experiences were evenly preserved, but to find out which experiences would be the most useful to future historians and most in need of preserving, we interviewed Professor James Harris at Ohio State University. Professor Harris is an infectious disease historian with expertise in the Spanish flu. He talked to us about surviving accounts from that pandemic. In his research, he found accounts from officers which survived easily, but no stories from the common enlisted troops. This gap in records meant that he and other researchers could only speculate as to what the experience was like for the average person. Lacking such information also makes efforts to prevent future pandemics more difficult. In order to prevent such a situation, where researchers wished that they had more experiences from the common folk and less from the elite, we decided to record and preserve the story of non-medical essential workers facing the coronavirus. In order to understand these experiences, we must also understand the world they occurred in.
The world during COVID-19 was very different from the world before the pandemic. As the virus spread, big cities that once buzzed with life became ghost towns as people entered quarantine and self-isolation. Holy sites, such as the Kaaba at Mecca, were devoid of pilgrims. Those who work remotely did, and most classrooms moved online. Leaving home without a face mask became taboo and in some places illegal. Shelves devoid of common grocery items became commonplace as people hoarded goods, especially toilet paper and cleaning supplies. Essential workers were hailed as heroes for continuing to work.
To remember this world and the experience of living in it, we created an archive of the stories of 12 essential non-medical workers' experiences during COVID-19. This archive will allow future researchers to look back and understand what it was like to live through the pandemic. To understand and categorize our interviewees' experiences, we researched the psychology of holistic health. The holistic model helped us understand that each aspect of holistic health is interconnected. When one is negatively impacted, the other aspects are negatively impacted as well. This knowledge was then applied while analyzing our interviews. The 5 aspects of holistic health are physical health, emotional health, cognitive health, social health, and spiritual health. We also researched human behavior in a crisis through the 6 responses to stress model. This model helped us understand how our interviewees were dealing with the stress of the pandemic through their words, tone, and body language. It categorizes reactions to stressful situations into 6 categories: fight, flight, tending, befriending, posturing, and submission.
Keeping these models in mind, we interviewed a dozen essential workers. These are our interviewees. They come from all walks of life and all over the world, from Hangzhou, China to Boston, Massachusetts.
Each of our interviewees had a unique experience and a unique story to tell, but there were commonalities between all of them. Taken together, these commonalities tell one shared story, the story of average people during COVID-19. This is the story we want to preserve and the story we are going to tell you now. Despite the chaos of the world during COVID-19, our interviewees stayed selfless. Almost all of them feared bringing the virus home more than they feared catching it themselves. Take Gina Gallagher, who worked on the front lines as both a pharmacy technician and a barista. Her main concern was for her immunocompromised mother, even when customers with COVID exposed Gina to the virus.
Or consider Kayla Pelletier, a physical therapist who changed her life to keep her immunocompromised patients safe. She stopped going out of the house except for work and groceries, even doing her laundry in the sink rather than going to the laundromat. In the case of Catherine Hartzell, who herself is immunocompromised, her first concern was her 21-year-old son. She had isolated herself from him in the same house, maintaining social distancing so that there was no risk to him, trying to keep him safe. Every one of our interviewees felt increased social strain and corresponding damage to their social health. Social distancing rules made our interviewees felt cut from their loved ones. Instead of visiting these people whom they cared about, our interviewees chose to protect themselves and their loved ones from this virus. Our interviewees also gave up outlets and hobbies. Mike LeBlanc normally likes to hang out in public with his friends, but he gave up his socializing to slow the spread of the pandemic. Nick Yeager, meanwhile, gave up podcasting and video production so that he could keep his restaurant afloat and his employees paid. By staying inside to protect her patients, Kayla also gave up the great outdoors and the activities that make her happy, such as running and hiking.
Despite their willingness to sacrifice, doing so was not easy for our interviewees. When talking to us, their thoughts were mostly negative, manifesting as depression and fear, beyond the fear of infecting others. Many of our interviewees were also much more frustrated during the pandemic than before. Their frustration had many targets, like customers who made unreasonable demands, like those who asked Gina Gallagher to pick up their groceries at a CVS drive-thru. Then, when Gina explained she couldn't do this for them, they made derogatory comments towards her, indicating just how considerate people have been during this pandemic. Liv R. was frustrated with her employer, who wanted to keep her coming into work even though someone she lived with was being tested for COVID. Instead of keeping the public at a distance, her employer had her open the doors for every person entering or leaving the pharmacy where she works, which shocked and frustrated her, especially when the test returned a positive result. Meanwhile, Nick Yeager was frustrated with other businesses, like his local Five Guys, where employees not only didn't wear masks, but violated social distancing rules by sticking their heads into customers' cars. Nick only grew more frustrated when the management of this Five Guys refused to help getting masks for their employees.
Even though they were frustrated, our interviewees stayed compassionate and found that other were as well. Nick Yeager's supplier gave him flexibility in his payment plan, allowing him to keep his stores open. Meanwhile, he offered free meals to his employees' family weekly, even those whom he had laid off to protect their health. Grocery bagger Eric DiActilio noticed that customers were more appreciative of he and his coworker, and thanked them for coming in to work amidst the pandemic. While the pandemic brought out the best and worst in people, our interviewees rose to the occasion. They never want anything like it to happen again, and they have advice to pass on.
Our interviewees hope that in the future, people respect the severity of the pandemic early on and follow experts' recommendations from the beginning. Many of them caution that guidelines only work if everyone follows them. They also hope that in the future, governments are more proactive and decisive, willing to take quick action in order to prevent pandemics from spreading.
American interviewees lamented people's and government responses to the pandemic. Z, our interviewee in Hangzhou, China, was proud of her nation and her fellow citizens' response to the pandemic. As the pandemic spread, business shut down quickly, widespread disease tracking was implemented, and people adapted. Z is already seeing the quarantine begin to lift in her nation, and is confident that soon her city will return to normal.
We couldn't have done this project without the help of our advisors, Professors Thomas Balistrieri and Sarah Wodenschwartz, the advice of Professor James Harris at Ohio State University, and our interviewees. Thank you.